There's some panic in Detroit, but what about nationally? We find out coming up next.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Matt Dery back with you on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day on Tuesday, December 12th and a Wednesday, December 13th. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Lions today, brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Follow me on Twitter at Dery Speaks, at Locked On Lions on Twitter, the Matt Dery Facebook fan page. We got the Lions. We got Denver coming up on Saturday night, primetime game, NFL Network. No better guy to have on the show today than the former Bronco, former legend in the state of Colorado, Colorado Buffalo Hall of Famer, and now VSIN NFL Analyst. Love listening to the folks at VSIN on my Sirius XM, but it is the great Mike Pritchard, former NFL wide receiver and former Bronco, joining us on the program today. Pritch, great to see you, bud.
Matt, great to be with you. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. Real fast on the CU thing.
Yes.
I'm sure you got up to a few games and the whole Dion thing, but it started off great, but there's a lot of momentum there, right?
Oh, yeah, there's momentum. I was able to cash the over win total for the CU Buffs, so happy about that when they got to 4 victories. But, I was optimistic in the beginning of the year in terms of surprising people and maybe qualifying for a bowl game, but it didn't work out that way. Every first year is tough in college football, especially when you have a program or taking over a program like CU. I mean, we were in the basement, hiding in the basement for so many years, right? Now we might still be in the basement, but yet we got that thing dressed up a little bit more now. So, Coach Prime is there and certainly acquiring the necessary talent, the necessary support to kind of get everything right in the right direction for CU.
There was no better wide receiver than Mike Pritchard at Colorado back in the heyday with Darian Hagan and Bieniemy and those guys. Mike, tell me about, you're obviously talking on VSiN every day and analyzing these NFL teams. State of the Lions right now in your mind, 9-4, still in good shape, but we saw the Packers blow a game last night, which surprised a lot of people.
Right.
But how do you feel about Detroit right now with 4 games to play?
Well, it's a long season. They certainly haven't played themselves out of any opportunity. And I think that's how Detroit has to look at it. I think that's how the fellas in the locker room, they have to understand that we haven't played ourselves out of the division. We haven't played ourselves out of a playoff picture. So we got to clean up some things. It's one thing to start off fast, and we see that all the time in the National Football League. But it's another thing to finish, right? Or to get hot, to stay consistent. Because everybody's caught up to what you're doing. Everybody's watching tape. Everybody understands your tendencies. Everybody understands who you are as a player. But can you evolve, as a player? Can you get better? Even though they might know what you're doing, right? Offensively, defensively, special teams. And then can you not only evolve, can you get better and stay consistent? So collectively, that's what the Lions, they have to do. They have to figure that out. Coach Campbell's going to have to figure that out with his staff. I mean, they're all players anyway, most of those guys on that staff. So they understand that. And it's a matter of making plays too. And that all boils down into that consistency that I was just talking about.
It's interesting. You've been in NFL locker rooms. You've won, Big 12 championships or Big 8 back in the day when you were there. Do you think when they got to 8-2 and people said, "Oh, it's their first 8-2 start since the 1960s," do you think they read their press clippings a little bit and got a little bit too big for their britches? Now with 4 to go, they can kind of right the ship. Do you think that maybe that seeped into the room a little bit?
Well, it's possible. It's possible, but it can't happen, right? The leaders on the team or people with experience in these situations, they can't let things slip. But the play is indicating that, like whether they're not making plays, maybe practices haven't been as crisp or lively, or there's a lot of mistakes happening. And okay, now we're 8-2. We'll let that slide as opposed to correcting it if you're 2-8, right? And so I think when you're that good, or if you start off that hot, you have to be more you know, acute to what you need to do. You need to be more focused. You need to be more demanding, if anything, right? So maybe, you know, the uncharted territory of the Lions haven't been in this situation, a collection of guys. Yeah, that kind of seeps in there. So they got to get rid of it, though. That's a dirty bug in that locker room, if that's the case. If complacency is in that locker room right now.
Mike Pritchard with us. When you watch the Lions and you see what Jared Goff did, especially early in the season, the time that he had to throw, healthy offensive line with Frank Ragnow, who's not
Right.
played, didn't play last week. Now there's questions about Goff all of a sudden because he looks uncomfortable the last few weeks. What are you seeing, and do you have faith he can turn it around?
He looks timid, to be honest with you, Matt. I mean, I think a couple games ago, just watching him not deliver the ball and be timid. For some reasons, he's underthrowing players too, and so when you're pulling a string like that, it's like you're not confident. I think as a thrower, confident quarterbacks, man, they'll thread a needle, and we've all seen those kind of passes, right? Confident quarterbacks, they'll stand in the pocket, they'll take a hit, and they'll just distribute the football and certainly believe in the player on the other side to make the catch, to make the play. And I think that's what needs to happen. Like if Goff starts to see everybody out there balling and making plays, catching a rock and doing great things, then he'll rebuild his confidence. I was shocked against Chicago that I didn't know he wore 2 gloves though.
Yeah.
And
When it's cold. Yep.
yeah, so I wasn't sure like if that's a small hands issue or what's going on. Because typically if as a quarterback you got the hand warmers and everything like that, you don't really need to wear 2 gloves. And to get a grip on it, I don't know if there's damage, because I remember when Peyton Manning had 2 gloves, and that was because he had nerve damage and he needed to grip the football. But typically, the Hall of Fame quarterbacks or the great quarterbacks I played with, they demanded that the grip was correct, and certainly they didn't go out there with any gloves on.
It's interesting. He wore those gloves too in Green Bay last year in Week
Mhm.
18 and played well.
Mhm.
And there's all this talk about the cold weather, and you're right. I mean, he got outplayed this week by Justin Fields. Justin Fields, Mike, I mean, he lit up the Lions twice.
Yeah.
And that's the concern, because now you're looking up and going, all right, Russell Wilson's playing well. Lions get him. Dak Prescott in a few weeks, he's an MVP candidate. Lions have to play him. So the other side of the ball, how do you fix this defense, right?
Yeah, they're leaky right now. It reminds me of the Lions of old, really. I mean, I thought Aaron Glenn, who I played against, had that thing fixed. And, early on they were conservative, I think. And certainly the year prior, a lot of blitzing and a lot of man kept coverage and stuff like that. But um, I don't know how you fix what's going on, because like you said, I mean, Justin Fields, just getting out of the pocket and turning the game into a Pop Warner game and being the best athlete on the field,
Yeah.
and you can't corral him, right? And then you allow him to make a throw. So it's like the Lions' identity on defense is not the same. Like, and you can't have it be the same. I get that, but with a quarterback like Justin Fields, man, bring in an extra guy. Even if you flush him out the pocket, having a spy on him. But just sitting back in the zone and letting a guy like that stand in the pocket and throw a dime to beat you, that's something I don't think set well with the Lions defense. They got to correct that. So it's understanding who they're playing. I mean, Russell, he's not the same type of player he once was, but he is capable of beating you from the pocket. So if you give him time, I think Russell Wilson is capable of finding those open receivers. Cortland Sutton's having an incredible year. And he has the cast of characters that he believes in too. So, the Lions, they got to be physical and stop the run, but understand who's at quarterback and pick your spots when you can cause havoc and maybe get off the field as a defense.
Mike Pritchard, our guest from VSIN. We're going to talk to him coming up next about wide receiver Jameson Williams as a former wideout, what a young receiver's going through. I want to get some Broncos stuff in the mix too with Mike. We'll do that coming up next. But first, our friends at Gametime. Folks, there's no better ticket app to find tickets, no matter if it's sports, music, comedy, and theater, than Gametime. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guaranteed. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I'm going to Indiana, Kansas on Saturday. My son's at IU. Going to see the Hoosiers and Jayhawks. I got my tickets. right there on the Gametime app. It is simple, and the view from your seat feature is the best. You just know where you're going to be sitting. So check it all out. They got tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after the event starts. It's the best place to find last-minute seats. Again, all-in prices show your total up front, so you know what you're getting, a great deal without any hidden fees. Gametime is unbelievable. Terms apply. Again, create an account right now. Redeem the code by spelling out LOCKEDON NFL, LOCKEDON NFL. You get $20 off your first purchase. Download the app. Use code LOCKEDON NFL. Get $20 off your first purchase. Gametime, lowest price, last-minute tickets guaranteed. Mike Pritchard with us, former NFL wide receiver and a former Bronco at that. The Lions taking on the Broncos Saturday night in prime time. By the way, as a road player, as a guy that went on the road and played in prime time, put yourself in the Broncos' shoes. Are you going, oh man, we wish this game was at 1 or at 4, or you like going on the road and playing in prime time under the lights, and that crowd at Ford Field is going to be bonkers Saturday
It's going to be
night.
bonkers. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the NFL, and anytime you're in prime time, you love it. You cherish those moments, Matt. I mean, they're special, and you want to put your best foot forward. And I think the challenge is there for the Broncos. One of the things about the Broncos, and as they're feeling good, they're not too far out of winning the division or playing for the
Isn't
division.
that crazy?
Yeah, they beat Kansas City, and now they have they have a chance. To got to take care of business, and they've been already looking at their schedule. So Goff is the only remaining starting quarterback that's on their schedule. Everybody else, they're all backups along the way for the Broncos. So they're feeling confident, feeling pretty good. Sean Payton's done a great job of establishing that credibility, as a Super Bowl winning head coach, and then getting and capturing the buy-in. Right, everybody's accepted their role. Even Russell Wilson, he wanted to let Russ cook. Right, Russ wanted to cook and perhaps become an MVP type of quarterback, but that got him into trouble. And so Sean Payton's dialed it down, and he's been more efficient. He's been allowing the players to make plays and certainly be more conservative. So the Lions, they have a confident bunch in front of them. But hopefully the Lions, they get a pretty good crowd, and they will. I mean, we've seen them travel. The Lions fans have been traveling all over the place. But yeah, the Broncos will be ready for that. Your number one mission, your number one goal as the opponent on the road is to match the energy of the home team, right? And that's including the crowd. So the Broncos, they know that playing at Mile High, so they'll understand that going into this game.
Did you like, a game like this? It's going to be raucous, like you said.
Right.
Did you like that? Was that something that you think that these Bronco players are like, oh man, bring this on? Or is it, man, this is going to be a tough, what's the mindset when you're going on the road and playing on a Saturday night like this in a dome?
Right. Well, Matt, if your mind's right, I mean, you're going there to take care of business, and the only thing you're trying to do is shut the crowd up. Um, I think championship teams, they understand that. You remember that famous clip with Shannon Sharp calling the president on the phone, and
Yes.
in New England, right?
Yeah.
Send more men. The Patriots are getting whipped right
That's
now.
right.
So it's that feeling, right? I think it's just you, it's the coaches, it's the players, support staff, all bundled up in a hotel, getting ready to play a game on the road. So it's not, a bunch of friends and family and distractions in the crowd. And so there's no better feeling to silence a home crowd and get that dub. And like I said earlier, I mean, I think with the Broncos on the cusp of understanding that they have a chance to win the division, they're going to be focused for this one.
Take me through what's going on with Denver, because, obviously here in Detroit, we're focused on the Lions. To see the Broncos a little bit, but 1-5 start. People saying Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, this is not going to last. Yet they've won 6 of 7. What do you see as being the biggest turnaround here?
Well, I think dialing down and then certainly making the game easier on offense has been the key for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. They're running the ball more. They're playing more physical. And that's the thing about Denver. They love to play physical. I mean, Kareem Jackson's been thrown out of some games, and there's been some other questionable.
He deserves it.
He does. There's been some other questionable. But on the other side of the ball, offensively, they like to get physical as well. And they spend a lot of money in free agency on the offensive line. And so the conservative approach has been helpful. I think Russell Wilson's not trying to do too much, and he's been humbled. Sean Payton has called him out repeatedly, and this guy has been a diva. He's been not the greatest guy in the locker room for a number of years, but all that's changed now. And like I said earlier, Cortland Sutton's having a great year right now. I think he has double-digit touchdown receptions, so that's incredible. They haven't had a receiver like that since Shannon Sharp and Ed McCaffrey days, and some great players that they had before. So, and then defensively, Vance Joseph and I want to say the front office got rid of some players that should have never been on the Broncos in the first place, and the chemistry has now developed, and certainly what Vance Joseph is doing as a defensive coordinator, calling that defense, that has been remarkable. Since giving up 70 points and that embarrassment against Miami, this defense has settled in. They're one of the better defenses in the league right now. Looking at some stats here, they're only allowing just under 13, 14 points a game right now, and that's incredible to think about on this stretch run that they've had.
It's crazy. Vance Joseph was the head coach for a second and comes back. That tells you a little bit about the culture of the Broncos, doesn't it? Like, you get fired, you're done. You're never going to see that organization again. He comes back in a lesser role. And like you said, I mean, after giving up the 70 burger earlier in the year to the Dolphins, they've turned it around. I love Patrick Surtain. I mean, they got some good players on that defense. I mean, the Lions offense has not been great lately. So it'll be a tough test. It sounds like Saturday night, huh?
I think so. There's a lot on the line. If you're the Lions, you don't want to limp into the playoffs either. They have to play well. I thought last week against Chicago was a great opportunity for them to just oil it up and start to assert themselves. But that's the thing. They haven't asserted themselves. They do it early in the year. But now when tendencies are out there, when your play selections and how you're calling a game and all that stuff is exposed, and teams are now trying to take away what they know you like to do, can you still do it, or can you get to other adjustments? And right now, the Lions, they haven't been able to do that. I think at times they have it in spurts, like getting back into the game and taking the lead. You're thinking, okay, everything's okay against Chicago, but then here comes the Bears, right? Here comes Justin Fields, and defensively, some breakdowns too. So it's a team game, and both sides of the ball have to be playing at a high level, and everybody's got to be accountable that way. Dan Campbell's got to calm down a little bit too on the sideline with some decisions, emotional decisions, I think.
You don't like going for it at your own 30-yard line.
I mean, as a player, you do, right?
Yeah.
But as a coach, you got to manage 60 minutes of a football game.
Right.
Don't live in a moment. And I think if there's any criticism for the Lions and that coaching staff, is that you have a lot of former players, and a lot of former players get emotional. Whereas, as a head coach, you're supposed to take it all in, observe everything, and then kind of predict the future. Like, let this thing play out a little bit, right? So it's tough to be asked to respond in a negative way. Like, we all want to be accountable as players, but man, if you're putting me in a difficult situation, I can only do so much.
Real fast on JMO, immense talent. Jameson Williams is first round pick 2 years ago, but not seeing the ball a lot. Was out there about 60% of the snaps this past week. He had only one target. You've been a young receiver in this league. Everybody wants instant results. It takes time. Just ask the kid in with the Chargers, Johnson. Mm-hmm. But as a young receiver, put yourself in Williams's shoes. Is this coaching? Is it him? Why is he not seeing the ball more?
Well, I think it's both. Believe me, as a coach, if he was getting open, you would want to get him the football. Mm-hmm. He's a hell of a talent. From what I've seen, I don't know. He's not a Ron St. Brown, like in terms of route runner, right? And that's a route runner. And then other players have stepped up. The tight end has stepped up tremendously. I mean, a young running back has really been dynamic too. So a lot of times you get lost in a shuffle that way. Like my rookie year, I was a third option behind Andre Rison and Michael Haynes, but I still caught a lot of passes because I understood my role. Like I wasn't trying to say, look, I'm the number one wide receiver on this roster, and no, I knew where to fit in, and I knew how to get the attention of my coordinator and my quarterback and get me to rock on things that I knew I could do well. And so I was a move to chains kind of guy my rookie year, and every once in a while I do some explosive plays. But in that role, I showed them week in and week out in practice that I could get the job done and I could get open. So I think from a coaching staff, you got to identify what his role is going to be and what it should be, and then convey that to him, and then make sure that in a week of practice, each and every week, he's honing in and getting better in that role or getting better with that role. And I think he'll see the rock a lot more if that's the case.
Final things with Mike we're going to do coming up next. I want to ask him about the state of the NFC and where the Lions sit. Still in good shape at 9-4, even though they stubbed their toe a couple of weeks here the last a few weeks. Locked On Lions today brought to you, though, by our friends at Jase. I know we come to sports to escape some of the crazy realities of life, but can we talk just a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary. Can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if one of my kids or my wife got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from the life-saving meds that they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. That's Jase. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com. Complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified doctor, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. You can't beat that. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. Use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. One of the best to ever do it at Colorado, number 9, Mike Pritchard with us, VSIN NFL Analyst. Hear him all the time on Sirius, on the VSIN channel. All right, Pritch, so you look at the NFC, all of a sudden Dallas looks like world beaters, San Francisco, Philly, but the Lions are still up there. There's not a lot of teams over 500 in the conference. How do you kind of look at this NFC playoff picture right now with 4 weeks left?
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles, they don't look the part, right? Double-digit wins so far this year. They don't look the part. I think that's been the case all year. And we'll see if they can manage down the stretch, because I think fatigue's a fast factor with them having played in the Super Bowl earlier this year in February. The Lions helped themselves out tremendously with the start that they had. And so that's afforded them the opportunity to kind of slip up a little bit. But like we were talking about this earlier, right? I mean, it's almost the end of December into January. You can't slip up. You have to be hitting your stride. You have to be clicking on all cylinders, all these cliches. You have to be playing well. And certainly you have to build confidence, because you don't want to just get to the playoffs. You want to get through the playoffs. And, I think the Lions, there's a lot of people that haven't been in this situation with the Lions. So the Lions organization hasn't. And so the goal shouldn't be just to get to the playoffs. I mean, that should be a given. How do we get through the playoffs and get to the Super Bowl? Because we have a great opportunity right there in front of us. And, I think it's confidence driven, a lot of that, and making sure that practices are really, really good so you can perform well on game day.
So where do you put Detroit?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously everybody's got San Francisco at the top.
Right.
But how close are the Lions? Can they turn this around and beat a Philly or a Dallas or a San Francisco in round 2? And who else behind maybe the Lions are you afraid of? Who would you like to see the Lions avoid in the first round?
Well, I think teams that are familiar with the Lions could give them trouble. And that's familiarity. That's within the division, things like that kind of makes you nervous, right? When the Lions are trying to finish out their schedule and get into the play, or perhaps win a division. This game against Denver is a tricky one.
Yeah.
I think the line is not indicating that. The line, from a betting standpoint, indicates that the Lions should be okay at home. And in reality, the Lions have been okay at home. I think last year was it Carolina, right? On the road, the Lions could have went to the play. Yep. Yeah. And so same thing last week occurred. On the road, Chicago don't play well. So I think at home, the Lions can take care of that business. But then you have some road games there. But Minnesota twice down the stretch. That's where it gets really, really difficult for the Lions, because that's familiarity. That's Minnesota's defense playing well too. That's a tricky spot. But the NFC is wide open past 3 teams. I mentioned Philly. I mean, I could probably narrow it down to just 2 teams, perhaps, really, to where, okay, those 2 teams are a lock, and they're on a collision course for that NFC Championship game. But outside of that, it is wide open. And the Lions, they got to separate themselves from that big group of other NFC teams right now.
And they'll obviously see how they stack up in a couple of weeks against Dallas. Final thing, it's interesting. Yeah. I love what you said about familiarity. They're playing Minnesota 2 of the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
They could conceivably play them 3 times in 4 weeks. That's real dangerous.
Oh, yeah. Really dangerous. I mean, that's like serious basketball, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and nobody likes that. But I think that's what separates the NFL. You know, you get those one opportunities, but you play teams multiple times and they really know what you're doing and feel pretty good and confident about beating you. That's when it gets tough. And do the Lions have the playmakers to get through that obstacle of familiarity? And I'm running this crossing route, but can you stop me? Can you prevent this pass from happening? Or can you stop us from running the ball? And then defensively, you as a defense, the Lions, they know what the team is trying to do, but they recognize this blitz or they recognize this coverage or whatever, but we're going to execute it to a high enough level that it doesn't matter. That's where the Lions got to get to, and I haven't seen that from the Lions yet.
They've got the playmakers, I think, but the defense, yes, I'm with you. I think it's a big concern. And the offense, this past week was one that nobody expected what happened to score just 13 against the Bears. Pritch, great to see you, and thanks for doing this.
Matt, my pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me.
Mike Pritchard with us from VSIN on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions for our everydayers. Join us again tomorrow.